All right, what do you think? Should we get rolling, guys?
Sure. Let's do it.
All righty. Well, hey everyone, we are going to go ahead and get started. Want to make sure we start on time here today. We appreciate you all joining us, especially right here at the end of the work day. My name is Stacy Kuzner. I work in marketing over at Ostra Cybersecurity, and just wanted to take a second to say thank you all for joining us and welcome. We really appreciate you hopping on here. We have an awesome webinar planned for you with a couple of great speakers. So today's webinar is a Titanic mistake, incident response without active monitoring. So we have Mike Thompson representing the FRSecure team, as well as Michael Kennedy from Ostra Cybersecurity. So thanks to you both for joining us, and I think we're going to dive right in. So Mike Thompson, take it away.
All right, thanks, Stacy. Yeah, so let's get rolling here. So just a quick set of intros here to kind of let you know who we are. So like Stacy mentioned here, I'm Mike Thompson. I'm our incident response team lead here at FRSecure. So involved in any time we have an incident response come in, and so it's our team here. So just kind of helping the guys out, and I tend to get my hands in most of the cases, so get a lot of experience on this side of things. Mr. Kennedy.
Yeah, I was just looking. It looks like we matched our photos today too.
Oh yeah, whoa, yeah. It's the only shirt. It's the only shirts we own. Don't lie to them.
It was either a black hoodie or this shirt I pulled out of the closet. So, thanks. So, founder of Ostra Cybersecurity, we are a managed security service provider for small to medium businesses. We've been around for 4 years now. We focus on protecting, providing a managed security service and for small to medium businesses. So,
all right. Well, cool. So we're gonna kick on over here, and I think, and so this is gonna be a little, two mics here. So Mike, I think let you kind of run through the agenda here and
sure.
Get rolling.
Yep. So today, really, we thought we couldn't have a Titanic theme without really a ton of references to the most important role of Titanic, the movie, the iceberg. So today, really, we're going to talk about the threat landscape. What it's like to enter the ice field. What an iceberg the size of like B-15 causes for large scale destruction. What we kind of see with these real world examples, and then the burghy bits, the growlers, where you really kind of think of those as the noisy BECs or phishing campaigns or other stuff that's out there that just won't stop. And then last, we'll finish up with don't open the flood doors to check if there's still a leak going, because you might not be able to get them closed again.
Yeah, perfect. All right, cool. So yeah, like Mike mentioned there, we're going to go ahead and get started with entering the ice field. So, like I mentioned here, we're I'm involved in a lot of the incidents at FRSecure, not incidents at FRSecure, incidents at FRSecure is working. So, incident response it's kind of a big field. I mean, there's a lot going on there, and really, one of the things we wanted to talk about here was so as you're kind of going into that danger zone, and realistically in today's world, we're kind of always in that danger zone. There's always some threat. There's always something going on. So we just tie this together here a little bit. So, one of the things we wanted to point out was that most incidents aren't related to these huge 0-day campaigns where some new thing comes out and no one's ever heard of it. I mean, realistically, most of these things start at like the user and the workstation level. So the types of things that Mike's group is monitoring for and that type of thing. So, I want to talk a little bit about even the smallest events, right? So little things like they don't seem like that big of a deal, right? A phishing email comes in, maybe somebody clicked a link, maybe they didn't, they're not really sure. But I mean, these little small events are often an indicator, right? Just like the chunks of ice in the ice field are an indicator that something bigger is coming, something else is going to happen, that type of thing. So it's really important that we investigate all of those events, take a look at all of that. And then two, once you're having an incident, if you're having a larger scale event, larger scale incident, digging into all those little small events and being able to tie those together to paint that picture of the true size or the potential size of the incident that you're working. And so I know in the next slide we're going to talk a little bit about how organizations are bigger than you think, and more intricate than we realize, and a lot more pieces and things going on there. So really just want to kind of talk about this a little bit, and just, Kennedy, do you have any thoughts on sort of the things folks need to be looking out for as they're coming into the first little bits of the ice field here?
Yeah, what I think we see a lot of is the anomalies, the odd anomalies that happen. That you think about, you see an increase of traffic that's being denied. Why is that happening? And then a couple of weeks later, you pair that with an odd phishing campaign that you haven't seen before, that's targeting specific department. And then maybe a little bit later, some small anonymous login attempts. And so it's like you said, it's really seeing, not just equating, oh, it's an increase of traffic, we're blocking it, let's move on. It's when you start to put the picture together of all the different pieces of the increase in traffic, the anonymous login attempts, a department being targeted, users clicking on, maybe somebody actually gives up their credentials, and then things go quiet for a minute. It's trying to the correlation of all of that together, as not thinking that a small little event happened, oh, we made it through, it's not that big a deal, but continuing to kind of monitor for it and look for correlation with other events, really.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely correct. And I mean, we tend to get a lot of incidents in where it's we saw something exactly like you're describing right there. We saw something a couple of weeks ago, it didn't seem like it was that big of a deal. Now we're seeing more things, activities increase, and we're seeing all these other bits and pieces and burghy bits, as we'll get into here, or things like that. So it's a really good point there. You really got to dig into all those, and oftentimes it's really hard to miss those things if you don't have some way to correlate them, or somebody watching to keep an eye on it and tie it together.
Yep, exactly.
Cool. So we'll move on here too, and I know you had some thoughts on this about kind of what's beneath the surface. Yeah.
Well, so I think a lot of times is what people, organizations are bigger. We really hear two sides. It's you have the paranoia or you have the apathy, and kind of getting in the middle of knowing how big your organization is. What are some of the things that your third-party access, and thinking about your web designer, your SEO, your social media side of things, who supports your printers, and why does that really matter? When you look at, we have come across clients that had a printer being supported by a third-party organization, and they were allowing full remote access via an application into the customer's environment. And it was expected use. But when you start looking at it and seeing that you have this vulnerable, open connectivity, and then how they could spread, they would remote into an admin's workstation, and then they would access the printer from that admin's workstation. Well, it's an admin on the network who has access to all these other things. And so, but they were just doing printer support. So we have to get in there and understand, that the business has to function, but there are all these different pieces that are, security for the sake of doing business sometimes is, kind of a complex, it fights each other, I guess, really. And we see a lot of that. We see a lot of, third parties using applications to do speed tests with non-standard ports. We see a lot of social media or that phishing campaign. We'll take them into other areas, and we're at facility management on there. But one of the biggest ones with Target, that third-party facility manager, just monitoring the HVAC systems, having that B2B connection into their network. So it's not really just your 6 to 10 to 150 employees in your organization. It's all of these other pieces, the connectivity that these other services that you have, or providers, third party, that have that access into as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I know, so one very, very recent example too, and I haven't got to dig in a whole lot on this yet to see, really what all happened there. But
Yeah.
so Okta, a multi-factor authentication provider, not Ostra, Okta. So
Yep.
yeah, so Okta was using a third-party organization to help out with some things called Cytel. And it looks like maybe somebody had gotten compromised there at Cytel, and they had also downloaded or exported their LastPass that was full of domain admin credentials for I would assume various companies really, but in particular Okta was the one that they went after. And that's huge, right? I mean, and you as your organization, you may not have the insight to see that happened, right? I mean, that's
right. Yep.
Realistically, you're not going to know that someone did that. And
No.
so that's
yeah, you're right. And we won't go on the rant of how that. I'll stop there. Sorry.
No, you're good, man. I mean, but yeah, that's that's a big deal. And I think the thing to note here too, right, is we're talking about organizations being bigger than they seem and things like that. And something that we often harp on here, and I'm sure you guys do too, is that everybody's a target, right? So we mentioned Target, we mentioned Okta. You hear about all these huge breaches that happen. I mean, for every one you hear about, there are probably a couple thousand that you don't hear about. I mean, we get calls, every week, all throughout the week, of people that are having these issues. So just because you're not a three-letter agency working for the government or something like that doesn't mean you're not a target. So always keep that in mind. So yeah. So the next bit here, just kind of, we talked about what's beneath the surface, and you can see here, with the iceberg, right? You just see a little bit of it. There's so much more there, but even beyond that too, there's the burghy bits, and this is something that Mike kind of filled me in on. I wasn't aware of the burghy bits before. It's a cool name, the growlers and that kind of thing. And do you kind of want to explain the two terms there, Mike?
Yeah, for sure. So icebergs are categorized by their size. And some of the big ones like the B-15, the A-76, the things that we all hear about are the big ones that break off, like the Antarctica shelf and move around. But the smaller ones, as they get smaller in size, the different naming conventions for them, and the burghy bits. And when we talk about like these little ones and these opportunities for the different places for compromise, those are really the ones that you're the alert noise, or the constant that we're getting feeds on is these burghy bits, like the BECs, the email phishing, the email phishing campaigns with impersonations in them, the different attacks from foreign countries, the port scans, that type of stuff. A lot of that is in this kind of the burghy bits, the small little pieces that we're getting this constant noise for. Where we see like the B-15 and the A-76, when we talked a little bit about Okta too, is there's the interesting that I think about that is that there's a lot of transparency. It's all over the news. Every time we see a shelf ice fall, break off in Antarctica, it's all over the news. It's similar with Log4j or the proxy shell exchange. Everybody's talking about it. Companies come out with IOCs. They're giving a lot of different information about it. And having an endpoint agent or a solution that we're able to customize and dive deeper into specific scans to detect and stuff, that there's a lot of enablement for us to do that, where we I think as business as an industry, we struggle is when we have all these little burghy bits, all the little floaty things that we're constantly steering around. And, as true as an iceberg, it may look like a basketball chunk of ice floating on the surface, but underneath it is going to be this massive, compromise that's going to elevate credentials in a 365 environment and, take over. So a lot of these little, smaller events, I think to have a tendency to lead up to these larger incidents. They're, the little parts that are floating around the bigger icebergs as we go through these. So,
yeah, definitely. And and one of the things that we've seen here, kind of a pickup in the last couple of years too, as you have those smaller bits, those burghy bits that you're encountering, right? These little, like you said, the BECs, the business email compromises, the phishing attempts, things like that maybe don't raise your red flag too high, but it's something happened. And so something we see here lately too is you'll have one attack group that maybe does that initial attack. They get in with, they get some credentials, that kind of thing, and then they just sell that access off to another attack group. So you may not even be able to pattern your initial attack and get it all the way through to the larger attack, and you kind of tie those together without some kind of correlation, without being able to watch those things and be able to correlate them and tie it all together. So you don't know that smaller burghy bit broke off of this much larger ice shelf kind of thing.
Right. Well, that's kind of the captain's tip that we have about resetting all your service accounts. Would you be able to do that? If you had an employee that had access, or your password manager was compromised, could you get in and reset all your service accounts very quickly and take care of things? It's being able to react to that too. Having the inventory, the asset management, things that we kind of constantly talk about. So.
Yeah, definitely. And service accounts, and it's the reason we call out service accounts here is they're a big juicy target, right? So they're almost always overprivileged. You've got an account that needs to run some printers, and you give the thing domain admin or like some higher level access, and those passwords rarely get changed. Oftentimes they're kind of weak passwords, things like that. So they become these really big targets. And I know coming into incidents, a lot of time we'll tell people, okay, look, you had an elevated account with elevated privileges get compromised. You need to go reset everything. And then they're like, okay, yeah, sure, we can do that. And then we say also your service accounts, and they're like, oh, well, we don't even know what that's going to break. We have no idea. We don't know what's out there. So, being able to handle that is important, because it, everyone has some type of an incident, right? It's not an if, it's a when. So being able to handle that when you get there is a big deal.
Yeah, minimizing the impact of that incident. Right.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And two, so we're about halfway through here, so I wanted to call out too, if you all have questions, there's a little question and answer button there. There's also the chat. If you guys want to throw something out there, we're gonna have a little bit of time at the end to run through those questions. So if anything pops up you want us to answer, security related or not, if it's about icebergs, I don't know, Kennedy may be able to help you out. I think he's a little more up to date on those than I am. But
I'm going to go out to Wikipedia again and pull out some more stuff.
Absolutely, yeah, sure, whatever works. So yeah,
I was going to say, we wanted to blow some up. Maybe I could help out there.
Sure, yeah, no, definitely. I mean, blowing stuff up is always fun. But yeah, so and talking about too, we're talking about actively monitoring, looking out for those things, right? So I really love this graphic here of the binoculars all covered in ice. They're completely useless at this point. But yeah, wanted to kind of talk about this a little bit here, and exactly the type of things Kennedy was just saying there. These attacks are like icebergs, other obstacles, right? There's a lot of them to steer around. They're these smaller chunks, bigger chunks, the chunks you can't really see, like you said, the basketball sized one. Right. But and endpoint monitoring is great, right? You can think of that as sort of your your lookouts, your folks that are watching things, and that's, you need that, you have to have it. But not everything's perfect, right? Things get missed. There are in fact 0 days that happen that we don't know about until they're already being exploited. There was a Chrome one, Google Chrome came out last week or the week before, and apparently already being exploited in the wild, and no one knew about it. So it's good to have that. So you're not necessarily looking for just IOCs, indicators of compromise. You may be looking for tactics. You may be looking for things that just look strange, right? Like, back to the icebergs, like, why is that water swirling in that area up there, that we're headed toward? Why does that look like it's disturbed, right? So there's not really anything there to say there's definitely an iceberg, there's definitely a chunk there, but there's something going on, and we need to keep an eye on that and see if we can, tie it to something else and figure out what's happening. And so you know, active monitoring, having a SOC, having some folks to keep an eye on that for you with some alerts and things like that is a great way to do that. You can see what's going on in the environment. You know, I see Notepad makes a connection across the internet, or you know, across the internet. Yeah, you know, over here on this device, and then on another device we've got an account logging in that probably shouldn't be. So maybe you need to tie those things together.
Yeah, looking for those anomalies of things is, I agree, is, you know, and we see some of that too, of like, you know, people, you know, 3389 shutting down that, you know, that, but changing it to a higher port, or, you know, seeing that similar traffic on an open port that's a high port, or looking for just the different tools, like I mentioned before, we saw this application that was doing using telnet port, acting a little bit odd. It was flagging for us, and through some investigation we found it was a custom application that was written to use this telnet port to do a speed test for a backup system. And it you know, things like that, you know, are you know, really making sure that, you know, that active monitoring, the investigation, because a lot of times it's just misconfiguration. You know, like when we talk about SolarWinds, it was the password being configured incorrectly. How simple those things are, but having that monitoring, that investigation, you know, you talk from an endpoint to the network to the email to the cloud applications, and kind of piecing all of that together is really important. So
definitely, yeah. And so, you know, like we mentioned here too, it's really important to keep an eye on that. You know, use all your data that you can to build that picture. But then at the end of the day, you know, things happen, right? Something gets missed, there's something going on. And so, you know, we want to talk a little bit about what happens when that happens, right? How can our endpoint monitoring and all of our things, and, you know, and what we've learned, you know, how can we help with that? And so I do love this one. This first one here is, you know, is your IR plan on the server? And so we see this a lot, right? You have a great incident response plan, you have all these great policies and procedures and that kind of thing, and they're maybe on a SharePoint server that just got ransomed. So, you know, then what do you do, right? So make sure you have those in a safe place and that type of thing, and you know, use the endpoint monitoring to keep an eye out as you're rolling through. And yeah, I know Kennedy, I think, you know, stop the flood part there.
Yeah, stop the flood. You know, doing a proper investigation of all of the incidents, and it feels like at this point, kind of, I've said it about 18 times, but it's, you know, the you know, it, having the security team be a little bit more paranoid, as opposed to just assuming all false positives, is a good thing. You know, what you're looking at is, you know, you don't want that malware to flood in from a device that's not on the tool. So if you're getting pinged that these agents aren't deployed, or you need to get the EDR agents in, or they're not being in the correct monitoring, it should really prioritize getting that done. We see systems, like we saw one the other day that was doing an Nmap scan that didn't have the proper tools on it, and one of the other servers in part of the solution flagged it. So we were able to hop on with the client, get tools installed on that machine, realize it was normal behavior. But if we hadn't dropped everything to focus on that, and look at, you know, kind of, you know, the Chicken Little of making sure that the security tools are there as well. And then kind of that playbook, you know, you talk about the IR plan, but having a proper playbook, doing tabletop exercises, it really helps the business, the team, the security team understand how to react to that situation. So it's common. It's not a surprise. You know, we're not running around trying to find where the binoculars are. And a little fact about the Titanic, the guy who had the key to the crow's nest that contained the binoculars was off the ship. He was reassigned. So they were in that ship with no binoculars. And it's very similar to Mike's comment about, you know, is your IR plan printed out? Can you pull it out of the folder and start working on it. So.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think it's great. And those are all good suggestions too. The playbooks and the tabletop exercises, make sure you kind of build that muscle memory ahead of time. Totally agree with that. So I think this is going to be a pretty quick slide. So Kennedy, have we learned from past mistakes?
No. It still happens. We're still going.
Yeah. Hopefully this helps a little bit. Hopefully folks are learning today. But yeah, we tend to keep making a lot of the same mistakes and not investigating things properly. This one here about I think
internal threats. Yeah, I just wanted to throw in here of like, do you have an offboarding process? Making sure that you don't have internal loss of data, employees leaving, maybe a mobile device management solution. I have some interesting stories. I'll tell offline if anybody's interested about this specifically. And so it's something you want to make sure you pay attention to. That it's just not external, but internal as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So popping off here to the questions with these two attractive folks here at the end of the slideshow. Looks like we do have at least one question out here from Craig. I'll just use first name so we don't get anybody out there. But so Craig's asking, is an MDR the best option with a small staff who's not able to work 24/7 to watch and manage all areas?
Yes, I would say. Obviously the best is to work with someone that can provide you the SOC services. An MDR is at least going to provide you that notification that something's going on, kind of work 24/7. What you're going to have to pay attention to is how much noise is that going to create, or how much more work is it going to do for you. There was someone we met with recently, and they had a sysadmin and a SharePoint administrator, and that was it. They were recovering from a ransomware, and they didn't know, and they weren't looking at it. They were like, well, we have the greatest EDR right now. I'm like, well, where's your firewall? This breach was this. It wasn't EDR related. It was, what are you doing for these things? And so having, someone like, get a security assessment from FRSecure, and then, get a partner that will help monitor and do that remediation, and, like Ostra will.
Yeah. Yeah. And two, to kind of back that up a little bit as well. I mean, even as incident responders, right? We have a limited number of folks, and we're all, we're all domestic. We're all, we do spread the time zones in the US, but, sometimes we need that 24/7 monitoring, and alerts just aren't always good enough. Right. So we do utilize folks to SOC type services to handle that. If we're in the middle of an incident, because you get an alert for something that may or may not be a false positive, but do you really want to roll out of bed at 2 a.m. and try to figure that out? Or do you want to let somebody figure it out first and then call you,
Yeah, I'm the last person to get out of, early. I'll stay up all night. I'm the last person you want to talk to at 8 o'clock in the morning. My wife will attest. So.
Yeah, no, I think that's a common danger with folks that work in technology, right? We tend to work late at night a little more and not love the mornings as much. So that was the only question we had. If anybody else has anything, go ahead and jump on in here. I know we've just got about a minute left, so as we're going, just got one in here from Demetrius. So we have a MDR gathering firewall logs. They've not been able to pull the data that we need. When we make a request for them, any suggestions for local monitoring or support or to supplement our MDR? Any thoughts on that, Kennedy?
There is, there's a couple of open source tools that I can think of off the top of my head to pull those firewall logs that you want in. The goal would be to have the MDR gather those firewall logs so that they can correlate them together. If you're getting the MDR logs in, there are some tools that you can put some monitoring or at least syslog data into your environment. I mean, you could easily, I don't know, easily, but you could put up an Elastic Stack or something. There's also a couple others. We can, I'm sure, well, Mike, I'm sure you can offer, or the FR team can probably provide some suggestions. What we do, we leverage that data, we stick it into a Splunk environment and an Elastic environment, and then we correlate that data across the two. But
yeah, if you're not, operating on true socket, again, it's important to have somebody who can analyze that data and understand what they're looking at. So do keep that in mind. None of these things are a silver bullet. One that we've worked with, just sort of honestly in DEF CON capture the flags a lot, is one called OpenSock. They've got kind of it uses Elastic on the back end and some things like that. And I mean, it'll pull the data together really well, but it's not all that great at tying it together and making those connections so you understand what you're looking at. So if you know what you're looking at, you can go for things like that. Otherwise, I do suggest you have somebody that does understand it. And then one last one here, I'm gonna jump over to the next slide here. So what's your beard grooming regimen to continue to look so fly? I don't know which one of this that's for. I'm probably thinking you've got the better beard.
Beard, oil and brush, and then a wife who yells at me when it's too long.
Yeah, that's that's true. Yeah, so some beard oil, some beard balm, things like that, and just try to keep all the food bits out is generally the best way to go about that. So I think you may be typing an answer here, so I'm going to let you answer that last one offline. So as you're going through that, just one quick note here from FRSecure. We have our 2022 CISSP mentor program coming up. Starts on April 11th at 6 p.m. This is completely free. This is a great class. It is a 13-week session. It's a time commitment, but you're going to learn a ton in there, help you get into a spot where you can get your CISSP if that's something you're interested in. So make sure you check out that link there, the FRSecure, .re there /CISSP, or head on over to our website and you can likely find it there. Cool. Well, thanks everyone. I appreciate it. I don't know, anyone, Kennedy, you have anything else to add? I know you're working on an answer here. Or...
No, I just thanks a lot, everyone. And, if there's anything that we can do to provide a more detailed answer, please feel free to reach out. We'd be happy to talk more.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're both fairly accessible. And if we're not, then we've got teams behind us that can help and we can get answers for anything you need. So definitely let us know. All right. Well, thanks everyone. Appreciate your time.